Throughout history, civilizations have gazed upon colossal stone structures and wondered, who could have built these, and how? On the rugged coast of Northern Ireland lies a landscape that looks less like nature and more like the ruins of an ancient road for gods. Looks like something from Elden Ring. The Giant's Causeway is made up of nearly 40,000 interlocking basalt columns. They're perfect hexagonal shapes fitting together almost like a puzzle. It's very specific. It's the kind of place that makes you wonder who or what built this. And how. Scientists say that these stunning rock formations were created by ancient volcanic activity, but that's boring, right? You didn't click this list for that. Irish legend offers a much wilder explanation. The tale goes that the mighty giant Finn McCool, like the restaurant, many restaurants we have here in Toronto, he built the causeway as a bridge to Scotland, where he intended to challenge another giant, Benidorm, to a duel. But when he saw how much bigger and stronger Benidorm was, Finn panicked. He just left. His wife had a brilliant idea, so she dressed Finn up as a baby and then tucked him into bed. I know, crazy story, right? Where was this in Game of Thrones? While geologists may have a more rational explanation than the whole giant baby building the bridge scenario, there's no denying the otherworldly appearance of the Giant's Causeway. Number 9. The Nuraghe of Sardinia. Scattered across the Mediterranean island of Sardinia are over 7,000 ancient stone structures called nuraghe, some of the most mysterious prehistoric buildings in Europe. Towering at over 100 feet, these massive fortresses are made of huge stacked stone blocks constructed without mortar, which is quite hard. No glue? How is that staying together? Archaeologists believe that the Nuragic civilization built them between 1800 and 1100 BCE, but local legends tell a very different story. And yes, it includes giants. According to Scandinavian folklore, giants once roamed the island, standing twice the height of men and possessing superhuman strength. It was they, the legends say, who built the Nuraghe, using their enormous size to lift and arrange the stones with ease. Number 8. The Cyclopean Walls of Greece. Throughout ancient Greece, some of the most baffling architectural feats are the Cyclopean Walls, these massive stone fortifications, named because of the Greeks themselves believed only the legendary Cyclopes would have built them. The ruins of Mycenae and Tiryns, both dating back over 3,000 years, are perfect examples. These walls themselves contain stones that are so large that some of them weigh over 120 tons. My back hurts thinking of that, and I'm not a giant. Even with today's technology, moving these stones would be an enormous challenge, so how did they do it? Greek mythology provides a simple answer. They didn't. Instead, it was the Cyclops, a race of these towering one-eyed giants, who built these impenetrable fortresses. Now, in some versions of the myth, the Cyclops were expert stonemasons employed by the gods themselves. Hope they got benefits for that one eye. But beyond mythology, some serious mysteries remain. How did ancient builders transport and position these stones of these size without pulleys or cranes? Were they using lost construction techniques, or did they actually have the help of giants? Number 7. The dolmens of Europe and Asia. Scattered across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia are thousands of ancient dolmens, these strange table-like stone structures built over 5,000 years ago. These dolmens consist of massive stone slabs, often weighing hundreds of tons, placed atop another, almost like a doorway to another world. I've been playing too much God of War. Archaeologists say that they were likely burial tombs, but their exact purpose and construction methods remain a mystery. How did prehistoric builders lift and arrange these stones with such precision without the help of modern tools or pulleys? And the answer, according to ancient myths, is simple. Again, they didn't. It was giants. In France, local legend credits the giant Gargantua, who allegedly carried these massive stones in his pockets and then scattered them across the countryside. You get a stone, why not? In Korea, ancient texts speak of Hwanguk, a legendary giant king who built the dolmens to mark the resting places of his people. Again, he's just tossing out resting stones. Everyone gets one. Number 6. The Fortress of the Gods. Perched high above Cusco, Peru, the ancient Fortress of the Gods is one of the most mind-boggling megalithic sites on the planet. Its walls are constructed from these massive, irregularly shaped stones, some of them weighing up to 200 tons, yet they fit together so perfectly that not even a single blade of grass can slide between them. That's super impressive, and so long ago. How did they do that? How did the Inca, a civilization without wheels or even iron tools, manage to move and shape these colossal blocks? They didn't. Even today, no one knows for sure. The Inca themselves credited Viracocha, a bearded god who was said to have created the world and taught mankind the secrets of civilization. Thank you, thanks for your tips. But some Andean legends go even further, claiming that this fortress was built by giants. Even today, the fortress remains one of the greatest engineering mysteries of the ancient world. Was it built by human hands alone, or did giant architects leave their mark on history? Number 5. Göbekli Tepe pillars. 12,000 years old and predating the pyramids by 7,000 years. It's really impressive. Göbekli Tepe is the oldest known temple in the world, and its origins are baffling. The site is home to enormous, intricately carved stone pillars, some of them weighing up to 20 tons. But here's the issue. At the time it was built, humans were still hunter-gatherers, right? Historically, they didn't have any cities, no agriculture yet, and supposedly no ability to construct monuments. So how is this here? How did they do it? Some myths suggest that giants were the first builders of temples, guiding early humans before poof, vanishing from history. Others claim the Nephilim, the giant offspring of fallen angels mentioned in ancient texts. They could have been responsible as well. Whatever the truth may be, Göbekli Tepe rewrites everything that we thought we knew about early civilization. Number 4. Easter Island. These 887 massive stone heads of Easter Island have fascinated the world for centuries. They look kind of cool, right? Just big faces made of rock. Are these Decepticons? Who built these? Each one stands up to 33 feet tall and weighs up to 80 tons. Now the biggest question is, how did the islanders move them? Look at them, they're massive. Local legends speak of the Hana Ipi, a race of giant ancestors who helped carve and transport the Moai. Now some myths even claim the statues walked into place, leading some researchers to suggest the Rapa Nui possessed a lost method of moving stones, possibly levitation. Yeah, magic, we don't know how they did it. Whatever it was giants, ancient engineering, or something more mysterious. The Moai remain one of history's greatest enigmas. Number 3. Baalbek's Triathlon. In the ancient city of Baalbek, Lebanon, sits the Temple of Jupiter, one of the greatest temples of the Roman world. But the real mystery isn't the temple itself, it's the 3 massive foundation stones that are beneath it, known as the Trilithon. Each stone weighs over 1,000 tons, far beyond what even modern cranes can lift today. The Romans built the temple, but who put these giant stones in place before them? Arabic legends claim the site was built by a race of giants under the command of King Nimrod, while others believe it was a pre-flood civilization with some advanced lost technology. Even today, no one knows exactly how or why these massive stones were placed. Either way, my back hurts thinking about it. Number 2, the Pyramid of Cholula. At first glance, the Great Pyramid of Cholula doesn't even look like a pyramid per se. It looks like a giant hill with a church on top. Still lovely, but not our ideal pyramid when we think of them. But beneath that hill is the largest pyramid by volume in the world, even bigger than the Great Pyramid of Giza. Ancient Nahua legends say the pyramid was built by Zelua, a giant who wanted to escape massive floods by stacking bricks sky high. Now the gods themselves were angered by his arrogance, and they struck it down with fire, leaving it half buried, where we found it today. Unlike Egypt's pyramids, Cholula wasn't just a tomb, it was a hidden city. Its tunnels and chambers are still being explored to this day. And finally, number 1, the Great Pyramid of Giza. We mentioned it, so let's talk about it. The most famous and mysterious structure in history has to be the Great Pyramid of Giza. It's puzzled scholars, engineers, and conspiracy theorists for centuries. Built with over 2.3 million stone blocks, each of them weighing 80 tons, its precision is unmatched. Even modern engineers struggle to explain how it was built. Ancient Egyptian texts speak of the Shemzu Hor, which is a race of divine beings who ruled before the pharaohs. Others link the pyramid to the Nephilim, these giants in the Book of Enoch. Now some even suggest lost technology was involved in this building, but who built the pyramids? Skilled laborers, giants, or a lost civilization?
So pictured here is a man named Les Eaton lying next to a skeleton in a doctor's office. Keep in mind, Les Eaton was 6 feet tall, and this thing just dwarfs him. The skeleton was discovered in 1933 near Steelville, Missouri. A young boy had been searching for arrowheads when he stumbled on something a little more interesting, a skeleton measuring over 8 feet in length. The skeleton was in pretty good condition, too. A local doctor named Dr. Parker had it displayed in his office for a while, allowing people to come and gawk at the sheer size of the remains or lie next next to it and have someone take a photo of them. Eventually, it was sent to the Smithsonian Institution for further study, but that's really all the information there is about this guy. After it was shipped off, it was never heard about again. There's been little to no follow-up information available, so it's definitely understandable why some people think there could be something sus going on here.
8 foot plus would be considered giant today, so imagine all the necks that would have broken looking up at this guy sometime between 1000 and 200 BC, when the average height of a female was merely 5'1" and the average height of a male was 5'8", which, to be fair, isn't that far from the average height of men and women today, with women coming in at 5.4 and men 5.9. Still, the discovery of an 8 foot 1.5 inch skeleton was a massive find when it was excavated near a massive burial mound in Ohio back in 2012. At the time, the skeleton belonged to the tallest man ever recorded in human history. Of course, today that record has been broken by 9.5 inches, but still. Along with the incredibly tall skeleton, lead researcher on the project, Hugh, found many other bones of unusual size, including what he described as a giant jawbone. Oh, and all of the bones found at the site were authenticated by the Smithsonian Institution. So you can rest easy tonight knowing that this giant prehistoric man was 100% undeniably real. Or you can toss and turn through nightmares of him chasing you through a dark forest. It's your choice.
Back in 1870, a story came out in the paper about the discovery of an 18-foot skeleton. Not the skeleton of some gigantic animal either. No, this was said to be a human skeleton, or something resembling a human. Really hard to say if an 18-foot tall giant can be classified as simply a human. Now, could this one have been an incredible exaggeration or a hoax? Of course, but it is really fascinating that this was a story that had been published in a newspaper. The story came out in the Oil City Times in 1870. It read, "On Tuesday morning last, while Mr. William Thompson, assisted by Mr. Robert R. Smith, was engaged in making an excavation near the house of the former, about half a mile north of West Hickory, they exhumed an enormous helmet of iron, which was corroded with rust. Further digging brought to light a sword, which measured 9 feet in length. After some little time, they discovered the bones of 2 enormous feet. Following up on the leads they had unexpectedly struck, in a few hours' time they had unearthed the well-preserved remains of an enormous giant belonging to a species of the human family, which probably inhabited this and other parts of the world, at the time of which the Bible speaks when it says, 'And there were giants in those days.' The bones of the skeleton are a remarkable white. The teeth are all in their places and all of extraordinary size. When he was in the flesh, he must have stood 18 feet tall in his stockings. These remarkable relics will be shipped to New York early next week. These remains were found about 12 feet under the surface of a mound which had been thrown up probably centuries ago."
Sometimes the government hides things from the public in order to keep us safe, and sometimes the government hides things from us because they want to keep us dumb, which is probably the case when it comes to the 12-foot skeleton that was dug up and was promptly reburied in 1819 in Lompoc Rancho, California. Now, to be fair, when the giant skeleton was dug up by soldiers living on the ranch who hacked their way through a thick layer of cemented gravel to reach the sarcophagus holding the skeleton, the natives of the land deemed it a god and asked that it be reburied. But you're telling me that since then no one has used any kind of scanning technology or taken any soil samples from the burial site in an effort to authenticate and study the giant bones? I gotta call BS on this one. My guess, the skeleton isn't there anymore because it was taken a long time ago to be studied by people who don't want us to know it exists. Maybe it's an alien.
The Bulgarian giant. Back in 2015, downtown in the ancient city of Varna, archaeologists found the remains of an exceptionally tall man for the time he was alive. While excavating a Copper Age necropolis near Varna, researchers uncovered the remains of a skeleton dating back approximately 6,500 years. It was found partially buried beneath an ancient fortress wall, positioned east-west, with its hands placed on the waist, which was how a lot of burial practices happened at the time. The skeleton was much taller than the average person of that era, close to 7 feet in height. The skeleton was found in a carefully dug grave, meaning the big tall man likely held a high position in their society. Some things just never change.
In 1895, the Smithsonian purchased an 8-foot, 4-inch tall mummy for $500. In 1908, they called it a hoax, but experts aren't so sure. The first report of the giant appeared in 1895. It claimed the mummy was 9 feet tall when in reality it was just 2 inches less than 8.5. Still, the Smithsonian made the decision to purchase the artifact for $500 that same year after examining it and declaring it to be a legitimate find. Now, all of a sudden, 13 years later in 1908, they called it a hoax and claimed that it was made of gelatin. I really don't know how a bunch of America's best scientists could have possibly missed that for an entire 13 years. Not to mention it wasn't cheap. $500 back then is equal to well over 14 grand today, and the Smithsonian didn't have the same funding in the 1890s that it does now. I'm just saying something's not adding up, and what's even stranger is that something quite similar happened in Oklahoma around the same time. A mummified giant measuring in at 8 feet 5 inches was put on display, only to disappear shortly after word began to spread. It sounds a bit like a cover-up if you ask me, which you kinda did. I mean, you clicked on the video.
Even the New York Times came out with an article about a giant. Back in February of 1902, an article came out with the title reading New Mexico Discovery, 12-foot giant found. According to the article, a discovery was made near an ancient burial ground. Luciana Quintana, a landowner, had found 2 stones with mysterious inscriptions, and beneath were bones from a frame that was estimated to be at least 12 feet long. Excavators said they found a 4-foot-long forearm and a well-preserved jaw, with lower teeth ranging from the size of a hickory nut to that of a large walnut. That was how they just described sizes back then, I guess, just used nuts. The giant's chest reportedly had a circumference of 7 feet. I wonder how many nuts that is. At the time, they speculated that thousands of other giant skeletons were waiting to be found. Legends have been told by early Spanish invaders about giant humanoids roaming the plains, and Native American carvings also seemed to depict some race of massive human.
Directly after a groundbreaking discovery made in 1959, lead researcher Donald Dregu was quoted saying, "The individual was of large proportions. When measured in the tomb, his length was approximately 7 feet 2 inches, and all of the long boxes were very heavy." The skeleton in question was found in Cresap Mound in West Virginia inside of a burial mound containing at least 5 other skeletons, a clay bench, and a fire basin, which might explain why the top half of the 7-foot 2-inch skeleton was burned. Well, it explains how, not really why. And it also doesn't explain why the bones of the skeleton were unusually heavy either. At the time the discovery was made, it was massive, but nothing really came of it, leading myself and many others to wonder why. What are they hiding?
Scattered across Sardinia are the famous giants' tombs, built during the island's Nuragic period. These structures, often reaching up to 100 feet in length, have been the cause of a lot of local legends, mainly that these tombs were built to house some very large people, maybe even giants. But the mainstream archaeology world explains them as communal burial sites. The tombs are long chambers constructed from massive slabs placed vertically and horizontally to form a corridor-like structure. The chamber is then covered with smaller rocks and earth, creating a mound. A distinctive feature of these tombs is their entrances, which had a semicircular row of standing stones. They look pretty cool. Definitely something I'd want to check out one day.
A giant mound shaped like a giant snake containing giant skeletons. Fitting, right? Serpent Mound in Ohio is the world's largest surviving effigy mound, which is super cool in and of itself, but it got a whole lot cooler when, in the 1890s, Professor Frederick Ward Puntham decided to excavate some of the mounds located next to the effigy. What did he find? Well, seeing as this is a video about ancient giants, it would be pretty weird if I said unicorns. In reality, the professor found multiple 6-foot tall skeletons and possibly one that was 7 feet. In a postcard sent by the professor, the giant skeleton can be seen laid out on a large stone, and underneath the skeleton it says, "Skeleton of mound builder, 7 feet in length, Serpent Mound." The only thing is, the skeleton is cut off at the shins, and the professor never confirmed if the measurement was an estimate of what the height of the entire skeleton might have been, or what the found bones measured up to, meaning that the skeleton could have possibly measured in at much taller than 7 feet, or perhaps slightly shorter. Again, the discovery didn't really go anywhere. It kind of just fell off the face of the earth, leading us to wonder why.
Number 10. The journals. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan took time out of his busy schedule of sailing around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he found a naked giant dancing and singing on the shore. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact and to make sure to reciprocate the dancing and singing to demonstrate friendship. It worked. The man was able to lead the giant to a small island offshore where the great captain waited. Describing the scene was a scholar along for the journey, Antonio Pigafetta, who kept a diary of the journey, and that was later turned into a book. When he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid, and he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist and had a big booming voice. On that small island, Magellan and his men gave the giant food and drink, then made the mistake of showing him a mirror, wherein the giant, seeing himself, was greatly terrified, wrote Pigafetta, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things had calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them and even building a house to store the provisions while on shore. Number 9. Giant in Mexico. In December 2022, TikTok user Squatch Watch Project, who claims to be connecting the cryptid community, posted a video of what they claim is a giant. The text on the video reads, "Real giant caught on video in Mexico." The video shows what appears to be some sort of mountain or cave. There is a hole in the side of it, and there's a very large man looking out. He seems to be staring at the person recording and then backs up and goes back into the rocks. Many people in the comments made jokes, but a lot of them think it's real. One user commented, "What's going to be the government's excuse for this one? The video and the zoom on this is on point." Others are commenting that it's like the film The Hills Have Eyes. Now, is it a giant, a feral human being? Who knows, but whatever it is, I will be staying far away. Number 8. Giant complex. In 2012, a team of explorers and researchers discovered what they believed to be an ancient pyramid complex in the remote area of the Ecuador Amazonian jungle, one not known to the general public, internationally, or even within the county. Bruce Fenton, author and researcher, believes the complex may be the lost city of the giants, so named for the large giant-sized tools that were found in the vicinity, as well as the local legends that speak of a race of giant humans who once inhabited the region. At the discovery site, there was one extremely large pyramidal type structure of approximately 80 meters square base and 80 meters height with steeply inclined walls. This structure is made up of hundreds of large stone blocks weighing approximately 2 tons in weight. The large hill has a flat area at the top where many artifacts have been found. It looks like a paved wall, an ancient street or plaza with a 60-degree angle, perhaps the roof of a larger structure. Many of the stones were perfectly aligned, have sharp edges, and seem to have been sculpted by human hands, said Mr. Giovanni, who undertook an expedition to the site in April and May of 2013. Number 7. The skull. A team of international researchers studying an ancient skull determined it belongs to a newly discovered species that's more closely related to modern humans than Neanderthals, but others in the scientific community say the skull might belong to a mysterious but already known ancestor. The researchers' study, published in the journal Innovation, said the skull came from a previously undiscovered human species that lived in northern China. Researchers have named the species Homo longi, which translates to dragon man. The skull is the largest Homo skull ever found, and the researchers say it belonged to a male in his 50s who lived in northern China between 146,000 and 296,000 years ago. The skull shows a face that would have been much larger than modern humans, with thick brow ridges and deeply set eyes, but shows a brain that would have been about the same size. The skull was reportedly found by a farmer in the northern Chinese city of Harbin during the early 1930s while he worked on a labor crew that was building a bridge. In 2018, it was given to a Beijing area university. Now, if the skull does belong to a new species, it's largely unclear what their lives looked like. It's also unclear how much they might contribute to the lineage of modern human. The DNA evidence suggests that if the hominin sees another hominin, they're happy to interbreed, even if their brow ridge is a little bigger or their skull is a little higher, said Karen Babb, a Midwestern University anthropologist who was not associated with the research. Number 6. Mysterious silhouette. In December 2022, a TikToker named MixMasterXL posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. They captioned the video, 40-foot giant caught on camera walking the mountaintops in Mexico. Now, I don't think it's 40 feet tall, that's an exaggeration, but it's something giant up there. It's a tall black silhouette that's walking, you can see their legs as they take steps, and both of their arms. Now, if this was a normal sized human, you wouldn't be able to see them that clear or that much. It's clearly something large looking down below from the mountain. Now, the comments were mixed, with a lot of people thinking it was fake, but if it wasn't a giant, then what was it? Number 5. Ancient burial mounds. There is very credible documented evidence that giant skeletons were found across America in the late 1800s. In New England, skeletons unearthed in an ancient burial mound were measured between 7 feet and 10 feet tall. While respected newspapers reported these findings at the time, which points to the credibility of their source. In fact, there are several documented findings of giant skeletons from all over America in the past, with most reports coming from the turn of the 19th century. There is also evidence that bones of giants measuring over 2 meters in height were found in the tombs across Sardinia. This was covered in an episode of Forbidden History called The Mystery of the Giants. There are some reports suggesting that during the 19th century, the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never see the light again. There is a similar story in Sardinia, with farmers in more modern times uncovering massive bones and teeth and handing them over to the authorities, only to hear nothing more about them. Number 4. Bone fragments. Giant of Castelnau refers to 3 bone fragments, a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft, discovered by Georges Vacher de Leponge in 1890. According to de Leponge, the fossil bones may have belonged to one of the largest humans known to have existed. He estimated from the bone size that the human may have been about 11 feet 6 inches tall. His findings were published in the journal La Nature in 1890. The bones were dated to the Neolithic period, since they were found at the very bottom of the Bronze Age burial tumulus. Writing in the journal La Nature, de Leponge describes the bones in detail. I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size. The first is the middle part of the shaft of a femur, 14 centimeters in length, and the circumference of the bone is 16 centimeters. The second piece is a middle and upper part of the shaft of a tibia. The circumference is 13 centimeters and the length of the fragment is 26 centimeters. The third, very singular, was regarded as the lower part of the humerus. The volumes of the bones were more than double the normal pieces to which they correspond. Judging by the usual intervals of anatomical points, they also involve lengths almost double. The bones of the giant were studied at the University of Montpellier and examined by M. Sabater, professor of zoology, and M. Delage, a professor of paleontology. In 1892, the bones were studied carefully by Dr. Paul-Louis André Kiener, professor of pelagical anatomy at Montpellier School of Medicine, for which he admitted they represented a very tall race, but nevertheless found them abnormal in dimensions and apparently of morbid growth. Number 3. On a mountain. In November 2022, a TikTok user named Painting with Lizards posted a video of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. Yes, Mexico again. They claim that they post all kinds of creepy content. Their video has the text "giant spotted on the hills of Mexico. Is this the legendary Nephilim?" The video shows the side of a hill with many houses. On top of the hill, there appears to be a giant walking around. This being seems huge, too big to be a normal human being. A commenter said, "The fact that you can see it clearly from right there, no normal human can be seen like that. That monster has to be at least 20 feet tall." Now, this is the 3rd time a giant has been spotted in Mexico, and I'm honestly starting to believe it. All 3 sightings were in different areas, which to me makes it seem more believable. Do you think there's a giant in Mexico? Let me know in the comments down below. Number 2. North America. Over 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and taller skeletons have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites over a 200-year period in North America. Newspaper accounts, towns and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this. These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast with strange atomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls, documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood over 7 feet in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall, and a skull with a 36-inch circumference reported from Anna, Illinois in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873. Now, an average human skull is about 20 inches in circumference for reference. The Smithsonian Institution is mentioned dozen more times as the recipient of enormous skeletons from across the entire United States. And coming in at number 1 is the giant in Canada. Okay, so this isn't a jungle, but TikToker Andrew Dawson posted a video of a giant in May 2022 sitting on top of a mountain in Canada. He zooms into a mountain and there you can see a large person. Andrew calls it a giant, and I agree with him because there's no way that that is a human. It wouldn't be that big. After his post, he reported having interactions with the CIA and Canadian CSIS, as well as claims to being stalked after the post. He also uploaded a post entitled "I'm Scared," where he informed viewers that they might not see him post ever again, but that everything was true. He then posted another TikTok of what appears to be military vehicles on top of the mountain where he saw the giant, which is just suspicious. Since that post, Andrew has not been seen on TikTok or any other form of social media, sparking plenty of theories about his whereabouts. His videos have gained millions of views, but suddenly the comments were turned off. Now, with this being TikTok, things have gotten pretty wacky, but it seems that the full story may never be told. Andrew's obituary was actually posted, indicating that he passed away, leaving family members behind, but did he fake his death? Was it a setup? His video seems so real, but his behavior with everything was frightening. Did the government do this to hide the fact that there are giants? Who knows? Number 10. Tallest man ever. Robert Pershing Waldo was born on February 22nd, 1918 and passed away on July 15th, 1940. He was known as the Alton Giant and the Giant of Illinois, and was an American man who was the tallest person in recorded history. He was born and raised in Alton, Illinois, a small city near St. Louis, Missouri. Robert's height was 8 feet and 11.1 inches, while his weight reached 439 pounds at his death at the age of 22. His great size and his continued growth in adulthood were due to hypertrophy of his pituitary gland, which resulted in an abnormally high level of human growth hormone. Even by the time of his death, there was no indication that his growth had ended. He was taller than his father by age 8, and in elementary school, a special desk was made for him. By the time of his graduation from Alton High School in 1936, he was 8 feet and 4 inches. He required leg braces when walking and had little feeling in his legs and feet, but he never used a wheelchair. Robert also became a celebrity after his 1936 US tour with the Ringling Brothers Circus, appearing at Madison Square Garden and the Boston Garden in the center ring. Number 9. Bigfoot. Now, hear me out. Bigfoot is a large, hairy, human-like creature believed to exist in the northwestern United States and western Canada. It's described as bipedal, measuring up to 9 feet in height and 800 pounds in weight, and covered in long, dark hair. Is it truly a giant? I think so. There have been many sightings of Bigfoot. It first started in Canada as early as 1884, when the British colonist, a newspaper in Victoria, Canada, published an account of a gorilla-type creature captured in the area. Other accounts followed, according to the Canadian Encyclopedia. Sasquatch book author John Green compiled a list of 1,340 sightings through the 19th and 20th centuries, and it has continued on today, with Bigfoot sightings reported every day. Now, who said giants have to be human-like? In 2021, the two-meter skull of a new species of giant ichthyosaur had been discovered, the earliest known. While dinosaurs ruled the land, ichthyosaur and other aquatic reptiles ruled the waves, reaching similarly gargantuan sizes and species diversity. Ichthyosaurs derive from an as yet unknown group of land-living reptiles and were air-breathing themselves, says lead author Dr. Martin Sander, paleontologist at the University of Bonn and research associate with the Dinosaur Institute at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. From the first skeleton discoveries in the southern England and Germany over 250 years ago, these fish saurians were among the first large fossil reptiles known to science long before the dinosaurs. Excavated from a rock unit called the Fossil Hill Member in the Augusta Mountains of Nevada, the well-preserved skull, along with a part of the backbone, shoulder, and forefin, date back to the Middle Triassic 247.2 to 237 million years ago, representing the earliest case of reaching epic proportions. As big as a large sperm whale at more than 55.78 feet long, this is the largest animal yet discovered from that time period on land or in the sea. In fact, it was the first giant creature to ever inhabit Earth that we know of. Number 7. Giant in Canada. Recently, a TikToker named Andrew Dawson posted a video of a giant in May 2022 standing on top of a mountain in Canada. He zooms into a mountain and there you can see a large person. Andrew calls it a giant, and I agree with him because there's no way that it's a human. After his post, he reported to having interactions with the CIA and Canadian CSIS, as well as claims that he was being stalked after the post. He also uploaded a post entitled "I'm Scared," where he informed viewers that they might not see him post ever again, but that everything was true. He then posted another TikTok of what appears to be military vehicles on top of the mountain where he saw the giant, which is suspicious. Since that post, Andrew has not been seen on TikTok or any other form of social media, sparking plenty of theories about his whereabouts. His videos have gained millions of views, but suddenly the comments were turned off. Now, with this being TikTok, things have gotten pretty wacky, but it seems like the full story may never be told. His videos seem so real, but his behavior with everything was frightening. Did the government do this to hide the fact that there are giants? Who knows? Number 6. Remains in a cave. A prehistoric human skeleton has been found in a cave system that was flooded at the end of the last ice age 8,000 years ago, according to a cave diving archaeologist on Mexico Caribbean's coast. Octavio del Rio said he and fellow diver Peter Broger saw the shattered skull and skeleton partially covered by sediment in a cave near where the Mexican government plans to build a high-speed tourist train through the jungle. We don't know if the body was disposed there or if that is where the person died, said Del Rio. He said the skeleton was located about 26 feet underwater, about 1/3 of a mile into the cave system. Some of the oldest human remains in North America have been discovered in the sinkhole caves known as the cenotes of the country's Caribbean coasts. Del Rio said there's a lot more to study that has to be done in order to correctly interpret, noting that dating, some kind of photographic studies, and some collection would be needed to determine exactly how old the skeleton is. Number 5. Sightings in Mexico. During November and December 2022, 3 different TikTok users posted videos of what they believed to be giants. All 3 videos were filmed in Mexico, but they were filmed in different locations. One video shows the side of a hill with many houses. On top of the hill, there appears to be a giant walking around. This being seems huge, too big to be a normal human being. A commenter said the fact that you can see it clearly from right there, no normal human can be seen like that, that monster has to be at least 20 feet tall. Another video was captured of a giant on a mountaintop in Mexico. The caption of the video said 40-foot giant caught on camera walking on mountaintops in Mexico. Now, I don't think it's 40 feet tall, that's an exaggeration, but it is something giant up there. It's a tall black silhouette that's walking. You can see their legs as they take steps and both of their arms. Now, the third video shows what appears to be some sort of mountain or cave. There's a hole in the side of it and there's a very large man looking out. He seems to be staring at the person recording and backs up and goes back into the rocks. So is there a giant in Mexico? I think so. Number 4. Ancient burial mounds. There is very credible documented evidence that giant skeletons were found across America in the late 1800s. In New England, skeletons unearthed in ancient burial mounds were measured at between 7 feet and 10 feet tall. Well-respected newspapers reported these findings at the time, which points to the credibility of their source. In fact, there are several documented findings of giant skeletons from all over America. There's evidence that the bones of giants measuring over 2 meters in height were found in tombs across across Sardinia. This was covered in an episode of Forbidden History called The Mystery of the Giants. There are some reports suggesting that during the 19th century, the Smithsonian Museum in America was very keen to purchase the bones of giants found by civilians, only for them to never see the light again. There's a similar story in Sardinia, with farmers in more modern times uncovering massive bones and teeth and handing them over to the authorities, only to hear nothing more about them. Number 3. Giant of Castelnau. Giant of Castelnau refers to 3 bone fragments discovered by Georges Vacher de Lapinge in 1890. This consisted of a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft. According to Georges, the fossil bones may belong to one of the largest humans known to have existed. He estimated from the bone size that the human may have been about 11 feet and 6 inches tall. His findings were published in the journal La Nature in 1890. The bones were dated in the Neolithic period, since they were found at the very bottom of the Bronze Age burial tumulus. Writing in the journal La Nature, he describes the bones in detail. I think it's unnecessary to note that these bones are undeniably human, despite their enormous size. The first is the middle part of the shaft of the femur, 14 centimeters length, and the circumference of the bone is 16 centimeters. The second piece is the middle and upper part of the shaft of a tibia. The circumference is 13 centimeters and the length of the fragment is 26 centimeters. The third, very singular, was regarded as a lower part of the humerus. The volumes of the bones were more than double the normal pieces which they correspond. The bones of the giant were studied at the University of Montpellier and examined by Monsieur Sabatier, professor of zoology, and Monsieur Delange, professor of paleontology. Number 2. Patagonia. In 1520, Ferdinand Magellan took time out of his busy schedule of sailing around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he found a naked giant dancing and sitting on the shore. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact and to be sure to reciprocate the dancing and singing to demonstrate friendship. It worked. The man was able to lead the giant to a small island offshore where the great captain waited. Describing the scene was a scholar along for the journey, Antonio Pigfetta, who kept a diary of the journey that was later turned into a book. He wrote, "When he was before us, he began to marvel and to be afraid, and he raised one finger upward, believing that we came from heaven. And he was so tall that the tallest of us only came up to his waist, and had a big booming voice." On that small island, Magellan and his men gave the giant food and drink, then made the mistake of showing him a mirror, wherein the giant, seeing himself, was greatly terrified, leaping back so that he threw 4 of our men to the ground. But once things calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunting with them and even building a house to store their provisions while on shore. Number 1. 7-foot skeletons. Over 1,000 accounts of 7-foot and tall skeletons have reportedly been unearthed from ancient burial sites over a 200-year period in North America. Newspaper accounts, town and county histories, letters, scientific journals, diaries, photos, and Smithsonian ethnology reports have carefully documented this. These skeletons have been reported from coast to coast with strange anatomic anomalies such as double rows of teeth, jawbones so large as to fit over the face of the finder, and elongated skulls documented in virtually every state. Smithsonian scientists identified at least 17 skeletons that stood at over 7 feet in their annual reports, including one example that was 8 feet tall and a skull with a 36-inch circumference, and an average human skull is about 20 inches in circumference, reported from Anna, Illinois in the Smithsonian Annual Report of 1873.
At number 10, the Giant of Castelnau. Our first stop is the Giant of Castelnau, discovered in 1890 by Georges Vacher de Lapinge. Sorry, I definitely butchered that. This tale revolves around 3 bone fragments, a humerus, a tibia, and a femoral midshaft. According to these discoveries, these fossils might just belong to one of the mightiest humans ever documented, at an astounding stature of 11 feet and 6 inches tall. Published in the Journal of Nature, George's findings point to the Neolithic period, deep within a Bronze Age burial tumulus. The bones, unquestionably human despite their colossal size, received detailed scrutiny. A femur shaft boasting 14 centimeters in length and 16 in circumference, a tibia fragment measuring 26 centimeters, and a peculiar lower humerus piece. Experts at the University of Montpellier meticulously studied these massive bones, and so the enigma of the Giant of Castelnau remains a towering testament to history's secrets. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support this channel by pressing like, subscribing to Most Amazing, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Emperor Maximinus. Emperor Gaius Julius Verus Maximinus Augustus, or Maximinus Thrax, stands tall in history as a colossal figure with the brutal reign that rattled the Roman Empire, who reads like a historical supervillain, what with his name, stature and position. Born in 173 AD, he climbed the military ladder to seize power, reflecting his tumultuous era. At 8 feet tall, his imposing stature set him apart, a physical embodiment of sheer strength. His loyalty-winning blend of military and physical prowess propelled him to the imperial throne in 235 AD, defying Rome's traditional aristocracy. But his rule was plunged into a nightmare of cruelty and dread. Emerging from a common soldier origins seemed to shape his chilling cruelty. Ruling as a despot with an iron fist, oppression weighed heavy on his subjects, burdened by taxing labor that drained their life force. As he focused outward, uprisings simmered within. In 238 AD, a coalition of anger coalesced against him, culminating in a storm of conflict and chaos, marking the climax of Maximimus's dark saga. One can only wonder how they confronted this 8-foot-tall tyrant. At number 8 is cave remains. Venturing into the obscure corners of history, we uncover a perplexing tale of a forgotten giant. Discovered in the enigmatic depths of a flooded cave system in Mexico's Caribbean coast, a prehistoric human skeleton emerges from the shadows, veiled in mystery. Submerged beneath 26 feet of water and cloaked by sediment, this relic of the past has remained concealed for over 8,000 years, concealed by the very forces that once shaped it. Archaeologist Octavio del Rio, alongside his partners, Octavio del Rio encountered this ancient enigma while exploring the cave's labyrinth passages. The skull shattered, the skeleton fragmented. It raises puzzling questions. Was this a deliberate resting place, or the site of an untimely demise? As the Mexican government plans a high-speed tourist train through the nearby jungle, this discovery adds an intriguing layer to the region's history. But the story doesn't end there. Delving further, we find ourselves amidst the cenotes, sinkhole caves that have yielded some of North America's oldest human remains. Unraveling the true age of this submerged sentinel requires meticulous study, dating, photographic analysis, and careful collection. Yet as we piece together the past, one fact remains clear. This real-life giant's secrets have broken free from the clutches of time, inviting us to rewrite history's narrative. At number 7 is the 7-foot skeletons. Over 1,000 accounts of massive 7-foot tall and even taller skeletons have been unearthed from ancient burial sites across North America. Yeah, that's right, not one or two, but thousands. These reports span a period of around 2 centuries and have been meticulously documented in various sources. Think newspapers, country histories, diaries, and scientific journals, just to name a few. Now, these skeletons aren't just of your run-of-the-mill variety. We're talking double rows of teeth, jawbones that could practically engulf a person's face, and elongated skulls that defy the norm. Scientists have acknowledged that at least 17 of these towering skeletons in their annual reports. Additionally, a skull with a mind-boggling 36-inch circumference was found, where the average human skull is around 20 inches. It's all there in black and white, buried within the annals of history. But the question is, why aren't we hearing more about these colossal anomalies? At number 6, a new species. In 2021, a colossal revelation was made. A newly discovered species, a 2-meter-long skull of an ichthyosauur, rewrote the pages of history. Forget human giants. These giants ruled the waves. Long before dinosaurs roamed, these aquatic reptiles dominated, boasting remarkable size and diversity. Intriguingly, they emerged from an enigmatic group of land-based reptiles, defying expectations with their air-breathing prowess. Scientists explain that these fish saurians hailed from an era even predating dinosaurs. Unearthed from Nevada's Fossil Hill member, this remarkably preserved giant skull and body parts date back to the Middle Triassic, around 247 million years ago. Imagine a colossal creature larger than a sperm whale reigning over the land and sea, the Earth's first known giant, rewriting our understanding of ancient enormity. At number 5, Goliath. A towering Philistine warrior of over 9 feet, Goliath embodies terror and challenges courage itself. Clad in metal and leather, his form loomed over battlefield, exuding malevolence that shook even valiant warriors. But then comes David, armed with a slingshot and audacious faith. Facing this monstrous foe, David's defiance baffles logic. He steps forth, fires a rock, and miraculously hits Goliath square in the face. Scientists suggest that Goliath's colossal size might have been due to a vulnerability-inducing hormone syndrome. A single rock to the forehead does the trick, and Goliath falls. This tale birthed the first underdog story, with David overcoming impossible odds. While giants may be rare today, these stories remind us of our smallness in the universe. At number 4, ancient burial mounds. The following puns are in fact intended. Digging into the past, we unearth a peculiar puzzle that historians might not be so eager to talk about: real-life giants. Now, I'm not talking about Jack of the Beanstalk here, but rather ancient burial mounds in America that held a giant surprise. In the late 1800s New England, skeletons were uncovered measuring a towering 7 to 10 feet. These were no small town tales. Credible newspapers of the time reported these finds, and it doesn't stop there. Giant skeletons skeletons popped up like surprises in a storybook all across America. But the giant saga doesn't confine itself to the land of stars and stripes. Travel to Sardinia and you'll find whispers of tombs hiding the bones of giants towering over 12 meters tall. Now things get even more interesting. Allegedly, the Smithsonian, that grand institution of knowledge, had a curious interest in purchasing these giant remains from civilizations. But these bones vanished into thin air. A parallel mystery unfolds in Sardinia as well, where farmers stumbled upon colossal bones and dutifully handed them over to authorities, only to find silence in return. So are we just tall tales away from rewriting history? The enigma of these real-life giants remains a riddle yet to be solved. At number 3, Alton the Giant. Born in 1918, Robert Waldo soared to over 8 feet 11 inches due to an overactive pituitary gland. His extraordinary growth was both a wonder and a burden. Early on, he outgrew his peers, and by age 8, he stood at 6 foot 2 inches. But this gigantism came with complications. Finding fitting clothes and dealing with constant pain due to his enormous frame were just some of his struggles. Fame wasn't kind either, as he was parodied like a circus act, overshadowing his humanity. Despite trying to lead a normal life and engaging in charity work, Waldo's mental and emotional well-being deteriorated. Tragically, an infection from an ill-fitting leg brace led to his demise at 22. At number 2 is John Rogan. Not to be confused with Joe Rogan, the podcaster, who dwarfs in comparison. Meet John Rogan, a name less known than his towering height. Born in 1967, he grew to an astounding 8 feet 9.5 inches, earning him the title of the second tallest person in history, just after Robert Waldo. Hailing from Tennessee and being the fourth amid 12 siblings, his growth was rapid but came at a cost. Ankylosis, a condition causing joint rigidity, struck him in 1882, rendering him unable to walk. However, John didn't let this hinder his livelihood. Stationed at a train station, he supported himself by selling portraits and postcards. Despite circus and sideshow offers, he declined, maintaining his dignity. Legend has it that he used a goat-pulled cart as a wheelchair, always drawing attention not only due to his height, but also his large-hearted personality. There's even a record indicating his giant lineage from his maternal grandfather, possibly suggesting a genetic link. John lived until 1905, leaving behind a legacy that refuses to stand in anyone else's shadows. And at number 1, what were giants actually? Imagine a world where giants actually roam the earth, not the kind with beanstalks or one-eyed creatures, but real-life giants that history seems to have swept under the rug. See, back in the day, before Skip and Uber Eats, our ancestors were the ultimate foodies, hunter-gatherers dining on a buffet of nature's bounty. This diverse menu, along with their semi-nomadic lifestyle, made them tall and robust, standing shoulder to shoulder with today's tallest folks. But then, bam! Agriculture strutted in with its monoculture of wheat and occasional meat cameo, stringing us to hobbit heights for the millennia. Now, agriculture took some time to spread across humanity, enough time for a huge height difference to develop between hunter-gatherer tribes and farming villages, and eventually tiny farmers would meet towering nomads. These agriculturalists side-eyed the hunters with their Flintstone-esque tools and their on-the-go lifestyle, all while munching on their fields and herds. To farmers, giants were brutish and boundary blind, traits now echoed in myths. So the myths of giants might be ancient memoirs of agrarian angst, highlighting the friction between farmers and foragers. In a world where size mattered, it seems like it was survival of the biggest.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Robert Wadlow. Starting off with the man who is recognized as being one of the, if not the tallest man ever. Robert was born on February 22nd, 1918, and although he was an average size at birth, by age 5 he was already 5'4". Like, that is almost my height. Imagine an actual toddler walking around the size of a grown man. New definition to the terrible twos. By 17 years old, he was standing at 8'1", making him one of the, if not the tallest teenager ever, but he certainly was the tallest man in the end, as he grew to be 8'11". His huge appetite had him consuming 8,000 calories a day, but being this tall isn't all glitz and glamour, and it can come with some serious side effects. He had trouble walking because of his fast growth, and this required him to have braces on his legs as well as to use a walking stick. Unfortunately, an ill-fitted brace would eventually lead to his very untimely death. In 1940, Robert received a new leg brace that didn't fit properly, and just 1 week later this brace caused a blister. Seems like a minor inconvenience, but this blister went on to become really infected. This infection very sadly went on to take Robert's life at the very early age of just 22 years old. In our number 9 spot today we have the ancient giant. Back in 1991, researchers were excavating a necropolis in Fidenae, which in ancient times would have been a territory that was indirectly managed by Rome. During this excavation, experts came across a tomb that was abnormally long, and after examination they too learned that the bones were also unusual. This discovery would later go on to become the first complete ancient skeleton of a person with gigantism. Measured to be 6'8", this person would have been a giant in the 3rd century AD in Rome, where the average man stood about 5.5 feet tall. This team was able to confirm this gigantism diagnosis when they found the skull, although they were pretty certain beforehand due to the size difference seen in this set of bones compared to the average bones from the time period. Although this discovery is an incredible one, we still know very little about what life would have been like for a giant in ancient Rome. In our number 8 spot today we have John Rogan. John is the second tallest man known in history. Born in 1867, John grew to be 8 foot 9.5 inches, which is second only to Robert Wadlow, who we already talked about. John was born in Tennessee and was the 4th of 12 children. He grew extremely rapidly, and unfortunately, this led to ankylosis, which causes abnormal rigidity in the skeletal joints. By 1882, this sadly left John unable to walk or stand. John was still able to make a living despite this mobility issue, and to do this he sold portraits and postcards at the train station. Many offers came his way to perform in the circus and side shows, but John declined them all. It is said that John used a goat pull cart as a wheelchair, and that everywhere he went he was the center of attention, not only for his height, but because he just had a big and lovely personality. There is a record stating that John's maternal grandfather was also a giant, requiring a larger saddle when riding a horse, so it is thought that perhaps there might have been some genetics at play here. John lived until 1905, and in that year he passed away on September 12th. In our number 7 spot today we have Anna Haining Bates. Anna was born in Nova Scotia in August of 1846, and by the time she was 22 years old she was already standing at a height of 7'6". At age 16, Anna went into show business because it was very clear she was taller than the average female. She began touring around, and in 1965 had a frightening moment at Barnum's Museum when it caught fire and she was too tall to escape through a window. She thought she'd met her end because the stairs were on fire, but thankfully she was saved when employees broke the wall down and she was lifted out with a crane. In 1871, Anna met another super tall person named Martin Van Buren Bates, who was also known as the Kentucky Giant and who was 7'8". The pair got married and were often exhibited at circuses as the tallest married couple in the world. Anna ended up passing away in 1888 at the age of 41. In our number 6 spot today we have Don Kohler. Don is a man who was born in the United States in 1925 and he lived until 1981. Don is another one of the few people who can be added to the list of humans who were able to reach over 8 feet tall, as it is recorded that Don grew to be 8'2". Don and his twin sister were born to parents who were slightly above average height. His mother was 5'10" and his father was 6'2", but Don was the only one in the family at the time who reached these record-holding heights. Don's twin sister grew to be 5'9", which means that there was a distance of 2 feet and 5 inches between them, which is a record recognized by Guinness. Don explained that the most difficult piece of clothing to find to fit his size was socks, and thankfully later in his life a hosiery company in Pennsylvania started custom making him socks. How nice is that? Later in his life, Dan would unfortunately suffer from kyphosis, which resulted in some severe curvature of the spine. At 55 years old, Don passed away from a heart condition, and as per his wishes, he was cremated and then had his ashes spread on Lake Wisconsin, where he just loved to fish. In our number 5 spot today, we have the biblical giants. There are tons of mentions of giants in the Bible, with the most famous probably being Goliath. Samuel 17:1-58 says, quote, "And there came out of the camp of the Philistines a champion named Goliath of Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a helmet of bronze on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels shekels of bronze. There was even the mention of the Amorites, a race of giants, 80 different times. People who study the Bible estimate that the heights of these guys would have been somewhere from 60 to 30 feet, but some mentions claim that the giants were as tall as cedars, which could make them somewhere from 50 to 100 feet tall. Either way, it's safe to say that they were towering and they were terrifying. In our number 4 spot today, we have Joseph Edward Beaupre. Joseph is a man who was actually born in my home province of Saskatchewan in 1881, so imagine my shock when I realized that I had never heard of him before. Joseph's parents were average height, so of course they were surprised when, by age 9, their son had already outgrown them. At the age of 17, he stood 7'1" and is said to have been able to lift an 800-pound horse. By the time 1904 rolled around, Joseph was 8'3", and he tried to become a cowboy but realized this probably wasn't the career for him, considering his feet touched the ground while riding a horse. At 21, he joined the circus, but as one can imagine, this took quite the toll on him, and it's said he was also dealing with tuberculosis at the time, which is just crazy. Sadly, this story takes quite a dark turn, as at age 23, after a performance and after coughing up blood, Joseph went unconscious and never woke up again. The circus refused to pay his burial expenses, and his father was unfortunately too poor to afford it, which meant that his body remained with the undertakers, who began displaying it in store windows and museums, which is just horrifying to think about. Joseph's body would remain with people who never should have had it in the first place until 1989, over 80 years after his death, until it was finally released to his surviving family members, who then cremated it. In our number 3 spot today, we have Patrick Cotter O'Brien. Patrick was born in Ireland in January of 1760, and he grew to be 8'1", which made him one of the first people to be known to grow past 8 feet tall. At 18 years old, he began working as a bricklayer because he didn't need a ladder to reach the top of the cottages like the rest of those he worked with. Like many people on this list, Patrick found himself in a life of show business where he called himself just O'Brien. It is said that he had to travel around in a carriage that was made specifically for him because of his size, and one day when his carriage was stopped by a highwayman, when this guy saw Patrick, he fled because he was terrified of him. Sadly, Patrick's size took quite a toll on his body and eventually led to his death, which occurred on September 8th, 1806, when Patrick was 46 years old. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Giant of Castleknock. A little different from most of the people on this list, the Giant of Castleknock is a term used to refer to 3 bone fragments, a humerus, tibia, and femoral midshaft that were discovered by a French anthropologist in 1890. He found these bones in the sediment used to cover a Bronze Age burial tumulus that some think might even date back to the Neolithic. If his measurements and estimate are correct, whoever these bones belonged to would have been the largest human to be known to have existed. This is because, based on the bone size, he has estimated this person to have been 11'6". Of course, without the rest of the bones, this is hard to confirm for sure, and it's important to note that there hasn't been a modern review done on these bones just yet. Perhaps it's something worth pursuing, however, especially if it means we could confirm the existence of a human who was 11 feet tall. Alright, that's pretty insane. Record breaking. Give the man a Guinness. In our number 1 spot today, we have Sandy Allen. Sandy lived in Shelbyville, Indiana, and her life spanned from 1955 until 2008. During her life, she was recognized by the Guinness World Records as the tallest woman in the world. She was recorded as being 7 feet 7 inches tall, and her height was a result of the fact that she had a tumor on her pituitary gland that caused it to release growth hormone uncontrollably, like somewhere between 200 and 1,000 times more than usual. In 1977, when she was 22 years old, she underwent surgery for her condition because if she hadn't, she would have just continued to grow and grow. Throughout her life, Sandy appeared on TV, in documentaries, and even had a song written about her. Later in life, unfortunately, Sandy found herself having to use a wheelchair because her legs and back were unable to support her tall stature. While she passed away in 2008, in 2020 her friend and manager John Kleeman donated a collection of her memorabilia to Ripley's Museums.